Hey guys, thanks for watching. So that Scott Horton interview I was bracing myself for some backlash from Tulsi supporters and Amash supporters, but I actually got 95% positive feedback. There were a few people who were angry, and then there were a couple who just disagreed, and that's fine. But there were very few people who were just lashing out at me in anger for having him on the show and letting him say what he said. And I've already said that, I might not judge as harshly as he does, but I agree with all of his criticisms. I agree. I do not support the war on terror, and Tulsi did. And I remember I was at one of her events in New Hampshire, and someone told me, wow, she's just like Ron Paul on foreign policy. And I actually corrected them. I said, no, she's more like Rand Paul. She supports the war on terror. I was just being honest. And I have this clip I'm going to roll from May of last year just to prove to you guys that I'm not adjusting my messaging to impress Scott Horton or something. Here it is. The only thing I would say is when it came to foreign policy, I disagreed with her on the war on terror. I think the war on terror has just exacerbated the problem. I think killing terrorists has just made more terrorists. I think the reason they attacked us in the first place was that we were over there. So she's a little bit more like Rand Paul than Ron Paul, or Jesse Ventura. Those guys are against the war on terror. They realize that the war on terror is a joke. She wasn't really on that page. She believed in the war on terror. I didn't. So, that's a consistent position I've held. I was against both times they wanted to impeach Donald Trump. I didn't have this show at the time, so I don't really have receipts for that. But I was. When Tulsi voted present, I thought that was cool. I would have voted no, but I thought it was cool that she made a stance like that. And I wasn't way into Amash back then, so I didn't really have any judgments at the time. I got more into Amash when the Libertarian Party was having their convention and, the debates leading up to it, and he jumped in the race. That's where I really started to look into him. And I agree with Scott Horton on the impeachment that it's not a good look. And I disagree with Justin Amash's reasoning. But I don't think it disqualifies him. What I do think is unfortunate is how much TDS Justin Amash has. I do think he is just overboard, and I've said that in other places. This also isn't just to appear to be in line with the cool big boys that I'm hanging out with now. Here's a short clip from my podcast with the Libertarian where I'm talking about it right here. And I've done that with Justin Amash. Some of his messaging over the last couple of weeks I've really disagreed with. I think he's been a little too establishment friendly, a little too anti-Trump. And I've, you've probably seen some of my comments I've made and been like, oh, come on.
Oh, yeah. I've seen some anti-Trumpness coming out.
So these are positions that I've held on these people, and Rand. I just did a video a couple weeks ago, or a week ago maybe, with Michael, Dave, and Charles, where I said Rand Paul has been like the biggest disappointment of my lifetime. That he's like that line from The Dark Knight Rises. You either die a hero or you live long enough to see yourself become the villain. It's kind of who Rand Paul is, man. It sucks. And, Thomas Massey, he should have voted the same way Justin Amash did on the marijuana bill, because I agree with Scott that prison is worse than any amount of bureaucracy you're going to obtain when you legalize something. Like, bureaucracy is better than prohibition. It just is. So I also agree with him there. And I'm also not as angry as Scott is. When you're doing these interviews, I have a time constraint, so I can't argue out every single point with every person I have on. I've disagreed with Spike Cohen on things he's said. The first time I had him on, I had him for like 45 minutes, and I had like 20 questions people wanted me to ask him. And so if you watch that video, it's from like 5 or 6 months ago now. I just don't have time to argue over every single point. And it was kind of this way with Scott. I wanted to get the questions in that I had, so I can't always argue with him on every single thing. I pushed back a little bit here and there where I could, but I only had him for an hour, so I had to get everything in that I could. But anyway, what I wanted to say is people who get angry at you for criticizing your favorite politicians need to shut up, because right now is the time we should be doing this. Right now is when we should be chiseling Justin Amash into a better libertarian, because he's been in the Republican Party for in Congress for a decade, and he's come out and he's being exposed more to people like Dave Smith and Michael Malice than the idiots in Congress. So we have an opportunity to make him more libertarian, to have him resonate with people in a better way. So that's what we should be doing right now. And so when people have criticisms of him and everyone just tells them to shut up, like he's my perfect candidate, leave him alone, the way Justin Amash is right now, I think he would do okay, but I don't think he would win. Like if we can influence Justin Amash to be more like Ron Paul, you're going to have more people vote for him. And I don't think that's too much of a stretch. A lot of people think it's impossible. I think he is very principled on a lot of important issues that Ron Paul was also principled on. So if you can bring the fire out in him on those issues, you could have Ron Paul. But, he's got to drop the Trump derangement syndrome, because Trump's gone and we need the Trump supporters. So this kind of gets into the next thing. We have a few contenders right now. Spike Cohen might run, Larry Sharp might run, Dave Smith might run, and Justin Amash might run. So who knows who out of those four will actually run. It seems like Justin Amash is definitely going to run. I have a feeling Spike Cohen is probably going to run. I don't know if Dave's going to run. I've asked him, and he hasn't given me a straight answer. And a lot of people want him to run. So all four of those people could be better, right? So Justin Amash could have more fire. He needs to drop the Trump derangement syndrome, and he needs to actually bring out his inner Trump a little bit, which is ironic, but he does. Like, he needs to be a little bit more vicious. I mean, he's just too nice of a guy right now. Dave Smith, I like Dave. I talk to Dave like every day right now. It's kind of weird, but in private messaging, we're in constant contact with each other. If Dave is going to be the nominee, he's got to rise above the rabble. Like, he's got to just let the insignificant shit slide, because right now he just lets it draw him in, and it makes him look kind of dumb. With Trump, when Trump is hitting people over the head and calling them stupid or whatever, it works for Trump because it's Trump. Like, Trump breaks so many rules of politics. He could contradict himself in the same sentence. He could call war survivors losers and it wouldn't lose him any votes. Like, he was a phenomenon. His rules don't apply to anyone else. So if Dave is going to run, he's got to just let the insignificant shit remain insignificant. If Spike Cohen runs, he's got to, I think he's done a lot better with his messaging, and he seems very serious. But he's got to appear to be less of an anarchist, in my opinion, if he wants to actually win. Larry Sharp, honestly, I think has the best messaging out of all of them. I really had a fun time interviewing him. I think Larry's a little... I guess the only weakness I can see with him is he's a little nerdy, maybe, or a little dorky, which I think is funny, but it's not a presidential leadership trait necessarily. So I think he would have to also build up some gravitas. He kind of has this maybe the same issue that Justin Amash does there. But any of those four, obviously, I'd vote for any of them if they won. So the hurdle I see here is Justin Amash has government experience, and he's got a stellar voting record. Even though there's a couple things I disagree with him, he certainly has like a super solid voting record. And he has connections, like he's won races, he's done this type of thing. So he's got that going for him. None of the other guys do. Dave Smith has never run for anything. And he doesn't have a lot of name recognition. I mean, he is getting on Fox Business a lot. So is Spike Cohen. Both of those guys are starting to get more media appearances. Larry Sharp has the publicity somewhat. I'd say more than Dave Smith or Spike Cohen, but he still doesn't have anywhere near what Justin Amash has. So the question is, if you like Dave Smith's messaging, is it easier to get Dave Smith to Justin Amash's status, or is it easier to try to influence Justin Amash to sound a little bit more like Dave Smith or more like Ron Paul or whatever? I don't know. Regardless of who ends up being the nominee, what I want to happen is everyone to unify behind whoever it is. And I want the four of these guys to be on the same team. I'm afraid that could end up not happening. I can see a huge divide if Dave Smith does run, and then Spike runs, and then Amash runs. I can see like a three-way split of kind of like the anarchists, and then like the Mises people, and then like the constitutional conservatives or whatever. And it would be so dumb if one of the three of them wins, and then the other 2/3 are like, fuck you. I really just don't want that to happen. So what I want to happen right now is I want us, if you are a Dave Smith fan, try to influence Amash to be better. If you're an Amash fan and, Dave Smith's style pisses you off, or when you see him arguing with someone who has 20 followers, step in and say, hey, Dave, knock it off. Like, this is dumb. Try to influence each other, make each other better. I mean, that's what we should be doing. Same goes for Tulsi. I would love Tulsi to join the Libertarian Party, and the only way she's going to do that is if we message to her that we have hopes for her and that we want her to change and we want her to join us. I think there's already enough overlap for her to come our way, and if she does, we can influence her to be better. Right now is the time to be doing that. Right now is not the time to be glorifying her as though she's a perfect goddess, and that goes for the other four guys too. Like, it's not the time to act as if Dave Smith is perfect, or Justin Amash, or Spike Cohen, any of these guys. Like, they've all got flaws, and they can all be better. So stop glorifying, especially politicians, but also people that you want to run for office. This drove me nuts working on Tulsi Gabbard's campaign, and I get it. Like, she's easy to glorify because she's beautiful, she's a veteran, she's badass. She's still in the military, she's a surfer, she's eloquent, she's funny, she's kind. Like, I get it. It's really easy to kind of deify her, but oh my god, did her supporters ever do that to her? They would never tell her, hey, I think you might have more luck if you try this, or maybe if you adjust your position on this, people will come to you more. And I did do that. When I worked on her campaign in November before the election, I really realized, wow, her views on guns are just holding her back like crazy, because a lot of libertarians would vote for her, a lot of Republicans, a lot of independents in New Hampshire would. And so finally I said, well, you know what, Reed, you've got to tell her. No one else is going to, so why don't you? So I came up with like a 4-page article that I wrote for her to read on gun control, on statistics on violence, on different types of firearms and all sorts of stuff. And a lot of people don't realize that she was actually way softer on guns than the rest of the Democrats. She had voted for the assault weapons ban of 2018, but that law did not confiscate any weapons. There was a lot of misinformation going on around about that. I think you would have to register the weapons, the assault weapons you owned, and then it was banned on further purchases. So obviously, I'm still way against that. But she was not Beto O'Rourke. She was not a gun grabber. She was someone who wanted stricter regulations. And so I knew that was somewhere where I could reach her, because her college plan or her healthcare plan, like those were too central and too complicated and too big, and there's no way that I could have any impact there. But I knew that guns were such a back burner issue to her. If I really got to her on them, maybe she would adjust her views a little bit. And she did. I hounded her for 3 months. I wrote her like 3 different articles. She read all of them, and I went to like every town hall to volunteer, and I'd talk with her for like 10 minutes after every town hall about guns. And I was like, I just want to sit down with you for an hour and talk about this. That never ended up happening because we were so busy, but I just hounded her every chance I got. And she eventually removed the assault weapons ban and the high capacity magazine ban from her website. So, and she told me about it. She said, Reed, because of you, I changed what my website says. I removed those things. So, I did, 100 hours of research and a lot of effort to get to her, but I successfully changed something, and that was just me. There was another guy who was kind of working with me too, but it was mostly me. I was hammering that home every day. So, I could have done it at her town halls, like, called her out in front of 100 people and said, this is unconstitutional, this is dumb, why, you're a statist gun grabber or whatever. But I wanted to actually change her, because I wanted her to win. I thought she was better than everyone else. And so that was the route I went. I tried to influence her, and I eventually did. So that's what you guys should be doing with the potential people who are going to run right now. If there's something you don't like, you should be trying to change it now. And to those who are acting as if Dave Smith or Justin Amash or Spike Cohen or Larry Sharp are perfect, and if you're criticizing them, you're doing it in bad faith, just ignore them. A lot of people don't like Dave Smith, and I'm friends with him now, I would say, because of how often we talk. I think it's fair to say we're friends. He's actually very open-minded, and he listens to advice. I don't know Justin Amash. I do know Spike Cohen. Spike Cohen is the same way, very open-minded. He'll hear anything. Same with Larry Sharp. Justin Amash strikes me as an open-minded guy. He should be coming on the podcast, on the channel soon. I've been in contact with him. Want to get him on here, and I'm gonna, I'm gonna ask him some tough questions, which I try to do with anyone. You guys saw my Spike Cohen interview. Like, I asked him, what did you guys fuck up about the last campaign? And he told me. Why have these conversations if you're not going to go to the tough stuff? So, all in all, chisel the people who could be running for president or any office into somebody better, and do it now. Because if we wait until they're nominated and then we're doing that as they're running against the Republican and Democrat, that's just dumb. Because, that's what happened this last time. Like, no one knew Joe at all, and then she won, and then she started doing stuff that was pissing people off, so they were just screaming at her the entire race, and it was just stupid. Like, it just didn't work well. So if we have people who we think are going to run for certain offices and there's things that bother you about them, be vocal about them, and be vocal about them right now.